We are live. There we go. Welcome,
Awesome.
everybody. Tonight, I'm so excited to have with me Joe Coria, affectionately known to me as Jojo. Joe is the social investor, and he's welcome, Joe, my good friend. And I hope we can get through this without too much laughing, because usually when we're together, that's all we do is laugh.
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
really funny actually. On today's show, we're going to have two of the most famous laughs in real estate. So,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll try to yeah, we'll try to get through this without laughing. We have a great time together. Joe's an extremely talented investor. I can't say enough about him. He's a super smart guy. Extremely funny, and great energy. I love to be around him. So Joe, again, Jojo,
yeah,
welcome. And let's start with, do you want to share a little bit of your background and how you started?
yeah,
And yeah. Okay,
absolutely.
awesome.
So for those of you that don't know or have never heard me be called by Jojo, that is my pet name. So if there's any Filipinos out there listening, everybody knows that most Filipinos have two names. It's their legal name, which is the one they put on their resume, but everybody calls them by their pet name, which mine happens to fortunately be Jojo. And no one really ever called me that in the real estate community until I started working with Alfonso, and we traveled across North America doing workshops, and he would never call me anything but that. So if you've been in his workshop, it sticks really quickly. And so, people that are really comfortable with me are comfortable using the pet name. And so I'm really happy that Jen is comfortable using that, because it sounds like, I'm surrounded by family, right? So usually only my family calls me that. And so, if you ever see me, feel free to call me that, because I am fast friends for sure. So my start in real estate. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I started off, and for those of you that do know me, I'm responsible for building one of the larger real estate communities that are around. I've been with this company for 12 years. And yeah, we've built this huge community, and this is where I kind of got my first taste in real estate. So I had other friends that were doing real estate. They were doing it all wrong, of course, and not making a lot of money. Or I would ask them advice, and they'd say, "Oh, you don't want to do this," because they're learning from hard knocks, and so they wouldn't wish what they learned on anybody. And so I found that, the information in investing in real estate was a little bit scarce. And sure enough, I come to this company and I learn, how to do due diligence, how to do math conservatively. And I kind of figured this was it, right? So prior to this, and it's funny, if you've ever been to one of our workshops, our trainers would refer to me as what we call the triple threat. So no cash, bad credit, very low income. And so, they would tell the story, and then I'd have to interrupt them and tell them, like, yeah, but little did everybody know I had everything else going for me. And so that was the big joke. I was a server at Woodbine Casino right by the airport here in Toronto, and I was making minimum wage at the time. 12 years ago, minimum wage was not $17 an hour. It was more like, and as a server, you make less than minimum wage because you make tips, and I think it was making something like 9.47 an hour. And so you can imagine trying to get a mortgage was really difficult. And I actually, I went to school for advertising. I ended up taking a job that I could take, and it was overnights. And so I would work at 2:30 in the morning until 11 in the morning. So I was driving to work in the dark and then coming home in the daytime, and people are on their way to work or they're on lunch, and it was just kind of looped. So it didn't leave enough time to do anything during the day and be productive. And it just kind of felt like something had to change. I was dating my girlfriend at the time for 12 years, 10 to 12 years before I even had the ability to propose and get married and have kids and all that stuff. And I really thought that there wasn't going to be a way out. And unbeknownst to me, obviously, real estate, for those of you that are involved in real estate, I like to call it, I like to refer to real estate as the way that that the mediocre person, right? Or someone that just kind of living a mediocre lifestyle can actually attain greatness. And so, I knew it was something that made total
Love
sense to
that.
me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's anybody with a mediocre lifestyle. If you want to live a grand, real estate is the quickest, most patterned way to do it if you do it correctly. And it's scalable and anybody can learn it. Unfortunately, isn't taught in schools, which is something that we talk about all the time. And so, I've always been around people that had income properties and they always acted like they were like on another level for me. And like I said, the information was scarce. And so going and being around like-minded individuals is what kind of helped me start to get that confidence and figure things out. My first deal, every deal that I've done has been with other people's money. But yeah, even the first property that I moved in that I purchased was a duplex, and I bought that with none of my own money. And so the strategy was owner occupied. I think I was in my late 20s at the time, and I was living in my parents' basement, and I had to propose to my girlfriend. And I thought, you know what? This is a weird conversation to have with my future father-in-law. What does that sound like? Hi, I know you've been dating your daughter for 10 years. We love each other. I was thinking about moving out of my basement and moving into yours since I can't get financing and we don't have any money. So that's not a conversation I was hoping to have with my father-in-law. And thank God I never had to, because by the time that I proposed, we had locked up our first investment property, and we did our own renovations, and we moved and lived in the basement for free. We had our first child in that basement, and yeah, we lived there for free. The upstairs tenants paid the mortgage, and it was history from there. That property was at the time $250,000, and by the time the repair was done and the ARV came in at about 425, I want to say. And so, I put in 13,000 of borrowed money, 5% down. And so refinancing and pulling that money back out, I mean, if 13.5 was the target, I'd well exceeded that with the value that we created in renovations. And so the rest was history. It didn't really change me much because I was starting to work part-time at this real estate company. And so my income had improved, but my credit had not, and I still didn't have a lot of capital. And so what I ended up doing was looking out into secondary and tertiary markets like Cape Breton, Glace Bay, Nova Scotia, Caroline, Alberta, New Brunswick is a big favorite to a lot of people, St. John, and I buy these properties that were in like the $100,000 mark. It made sense to me that if I had 100 grand, I could either put that in as a down payment in a reno, or that could be 5 down payments in the tertiary markets that I invest in. And so that's how I got our steady growth. And yeah, I kind of did that for many years and learning the ways of OPM and joint venture partnering until finally I constructed the deal that I'm working on now, which is the infamous Sabrina Park Affordable Housing Project. And yeah, I've successfully raised over 2 million by now. The initial raise was $2 million, and then now I think I'm probably at 2.5, maybe almost 3 million. So it's an ongoing. It's for those of you that don't know, we're raising into a REIT, and yeah, so that actually turned me from OPM investor to a capital raiser. So now people introduce me as this is Joe and he's a capital raiser. I don't know if I would call myself that, but that's how they refer to me. And so, yeah, I prefer capital raiser over developer because I know more about capital raising than I'll ever know about developing, right? And so, yeah, that's just kind of what I've grown into. What I was before a capital raiser is I would call myself a deal engineer. So I could reverse engineer a deal, figure out how many parties could be involved for it to make sense, and bring the necessary people together to get the job done. For Sabrina Park, it was, we noticed the listing. Someone had a development posted and they were trying to sell the 8 townhomes. And we called this person, called on the listing, and I said, if I had to guess, it looks like you've got a development. And it looks like you're selling these 8 townhomes to fund the construction because you're a bit behind. And she said, well, a matter of fact, that's exactly what's happening. And I said, well, instead of developing to resale, because resale is a moving target right now, and we don't know what the resale value will be, it's hard for her to get financing and that kind of stuff. I asked her, have you ever thought of building the whole development and keeping it for rent? And she said, holy crap, I never thought about that. But the value would be based on the income it generates. And it was, proposed to be 171 units. And I thought, well, what do you think that would be worth? And what would that cash flow? And so we started to go through the math. And of course, we had a deal on our hands. And so I was the deal maker before I was a capital raiser. And I brought in the necessary parties to get this done. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get through the presentation. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a father. I've got 2 beautiful girls, 7 and 4, Nev and Naomi. me and they light up my life. I really focus on spending a lot of time and being present. What they don't understand is that, real estate for me is going to get me out of work and out of responsibilities so that I can spend time with them. I'm already fortunate enough to drop them off at school, pick them up from school, but I need a little bit more time than that, right? And so that's kind of the idea. An interesting tidbit, when my daughter found out, the 7-year-old, when she found out I was investing in real estate, we drove by a park and I said, look at that park. Is that really cool? It was a brand new park with a splash pad. And she said, yeah, that's really nice. That's really cool. Can we play there someday? And I said, absolutely. And I just kind of challenged her and I said, do you think you could design a better park than that? And she said, I bet I could make the best park. And I said, that would be a pretty good job for you. I think you'd be really good at. And she says, well, how do you get a job making parks for a living? And I said, well, you go to university, right? You get a job as like a city planner or something like that. You apprentice under someone above you will do everything. And then when that person retires at some point 30 years later, then you step into that role and you can start designing parks. And she was like snoring, like, man, that would take forever. And I just kind of looked at her and challenged her thinking and said, what if daddy builds a neighborhood and you can design the park? That would happen a lot sooner, don't you think? And she's like, you would do that for me? And so really funny enough, it was just an idea. And then where we met at a real estate retreat camp, Jan and I, and we learned how to develop. And we learned the difference between unorganized townships and organized townships. And me and my wife were super excited about what we had learned there. And we were driving home. She was so inspired. And she said, like, I think we should buy land in an unorganized township. And what we're going to do is we'll sever the lots and we'll build cottages for ourselves and our kids. And so she was so, enthralled by this idea. We get home, our kids are waiting for us. And she says, Nev, do you know where we were for the weekend? We were at camp. And she's like, like swimming camp or like science camp. And we're like, no, like real estate camp. And we learned to buy land. And guess what we decided? And she was ready there to spill the beans to tell her we're gonna buy cottages. And my daughter looked her right in the eyes and looked at me, looked her in the eyes and said, I get to design my park now? and Val looked at Nev and was like, what are you talking about? Because that was a little side conversation we had in the car. And so it was funny how a year later she had remembered that. And I think the warm and fuzzies was, number one, daddy does what he says he's going to do. And number two, she actually believed that that was a reality for her in her future. It was in her cards that one day she would design a park. So that's part of my why is to build a neighborhood, own it, and let my daughter design a park. I know it's a fun goal that can't be measured, and stuff like that really gets me excited. And so, I come from two immigrant parents that have always had 3 jobs, didn't really know them, I knew them, they were my parents, but they were always gone. I have 4 siblings. We're all 8 years apart. So I'm 42 and my youngest brother is 22. And then I've got another brother who's 29 and I've got a sister who's 31. Yeah, if I've got the math right. And so we're all gapped out. I think my sister's like 33 by now, 8 years or whatever that is. But yeah, huge gaps. And so, I grew up really fast, being a father really fast. And so now that I've got my own kids, I can take what I've learned in practice over those many years. And a couple of things that I know I didn't want for my life was, coming from immigrant families and my parents having great jobs, but there's 4 of us, right? So we're always fighting for food. Often they'd have to say no, unfortunately, right? They'd have to say no. And I knew that when I had kids and was a family man, I never wanted to say no to my kids unless it was what's best for them. If that makes sense. Like I never wanted to say no because I couldn't. Am I at that place now? No, not yet. So they're definitely still hearing no, but I'd like to get to the place where, they don't feel less than their peers, right? Like I remember, and this is going to sound really spoiled, but I remember really wanting a Super Nintendo and not being able to afford it. Number one, because I was too young to get a job, but number two, my parents looked at that as an expense that was totally out of reach. And, listening to kids talk about the games that they played and playing them together really made me feel like a less than, unfortunately. Now I know better. I know what my riches are. But at the time, I remember thinking that was a really shitty feeling. And I really don't want that for my kids. And so for the most part, we're able to go above and beyond. And I just want to kind of keep that consistent for them. So, yeah.
Very nice. Very, very nice. Yes.
Yeah, it's a huge leap from triple threat. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're a double threat or a single threat, remember, no cash, minimum wage, very bad credit, And, we managed to, build a beautiful portfolio that spans across the country. And now I'm a capital raiser building, a larger development. Like I said, I wouldn't call myself a developer, but I'll definitely call myself a dreamer or a dream weaver, making things come to life. And yeah, so that's me in a little bit of a nutshell. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great story, and how empowering for your children to um, have the dream of being able to build a park.
Yeah, it's
That
really
their,
cool.
right? That their daddy is going to build a neighborhood so they can build a park or design
Yeah,
a park. Yeah.
it's gonna be really cool when it's all
Yeah.
said and done and the park is done. Like, I would love to say that they're gonna get street names, but we'll start with naming the park after them. And every time we go and visit a really cool playground, or what they refer to here in Cambridge as a creative, my daughter takes all these different elements from different parks and she'll say, Daddy, we need to put this in our park, which is super cool. So yeah, a lot of stuff to come. Can't wait for that milestone in our lives to take place. So
That's adorable. That's adorable. So, tell us about raising capital, and we're all pretty aware of the climate changes going on.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So first off, disclaimer, I wouldn't call myself a capital raising expert or professional. I think I've done it and I've done it well, which I'll definitely take the kudos on. I definitely didn't do it alone. There's definitely a formula to that, and we'll speak a little bit about that. But yeah, for those of you that are current in the, some of you might be new and some of you might have been around for a really long time. There's a lot of unrest in the lending community, right? And even borrowers. So for lenders, there's a lot of unrest. There's a lack of movement. There's a lack of trust. And for the borrowers, you could see that there's a lot of borrowers in the way that they post and comment on each other's posts. There's a little bit of scrutiny in the deals that are offered, in the ways the numbers are displayed, and due diligence. It's like never in my 12 years had I ever seen someone troll another person's deal. Now a deal comes up and there's always one or two people that will have a comment, which is great. I mean, it's great for the public, but we used to be able to operate in a place where we had this same mutual level of respect. Now that things are getting a little bit tighter, it's funny when I go to real estate meetups and I hear these things. Oh, did you see that deal that this person came up with? What a shit deal. I mean, like, who are we to say that?
yeah,
Right. But because things are a little bit tight, I think it's changing the way that people communicate with each other. It's definitely changed the way that people have trusted, which is horrible. But if you think about it, we, me and a few of my peers, we did a count for all, like, based on all the companies that have either claimed bankruptcy or are late on interest payments, and it looks like something like $750 million of unpaid, unreturned funds. And you got to remember, this is 750 million of recyclable money, right? Up until this moment, a lot of these lenders were repeat lenders. So not only they're not getting their capital back, but if they do get it back, who knows what they're going to do with it? They're definitely going to hold it close. Right. I know that for people that I'm speaking to, that I'm hoping to get back into the REIT after we discharge them from the second mortgage, they really just want to hold on to it. I'm talking to a lot of people, and while interest is a huge factor, and rate of return is a huge factor. Actually, more people are focused on the viability of capital return. And I've never seen that in 12 years. People always go for the highest rates, the shortest terms, you know what I mean? And people weren't always concerned with capital return. Yes, it's an important factor. Yes, you have to do your due diligence, but that's not where people would emphasize the most of their time. Right. So now that I get on discovery calls, people really want to know, show me how my money is safe, which is important for all of us borrowers and issuers to be able to dictate that, what it looks like. But the landscape has really changed. I don't know if any of you are out there and you're raising capital right now, and you've been raising capital before this change took place. It used to be the case that, and I hope this is the same for everybody. I don't want to seem like I'm bragging, but you could do a Zoom session, okay, have 30 attendees, be raising $2 million, and you'd be done the raise in 3 weeks. Now I've seen people that are raising just $1 million have to go months and months until they reach that goal. And there's quite a few people, I'm sure we share some of the same friends. And so it's an indication that the climate has changed. Is it concerning? Absolutely. We have deals on the go that we thought were going to get funded, and they're taking double the time to fund, right? You're losing confidence, and sometimes people aren't funding at all, and it's collapsing the companies. And so I don't wish that on anybody. I hope that this session is helpful for anybody that's a little bit stuck. I'll share a little bit of the things that are working for us and for a lot of other members in our community that are still doing well and still finishing their funding. But there's a few things. And so, what I found was most of us have had to pivot. Jen, have you noticed anything that you've had to change, or have you noticed it a little bit slow? What are your things looking like?
Yeah. Well, obviously there's been some big names in the industry that have defaulted that sends a
You
shockwave
didn't,
through the
you
community.
didn't expect. So number one, I hate to use my ADHD to totally change the topic, but I'm so glad that you didn't say, "Oh, I wonder if you know how interviews work." I'm supposed to ask the questions because I totally flipped it, totally flipped it on you.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, totally true. And here's the thing that you hear. It's a little bit of a pattern is, "Oh, I know it wasn't that person's intention." Right? It was never that person's intention. And that's everybody. It's every single issuer and every single borrower. It was never their intention to get here, but they're here now. And so what is the action item for all of us is better due diligence and better transparency. If you're a borrower, transparency is key. Bringing in those pieces that you might not have is so, so important. And then being transparent, having really good investor relations is going to take you very far. And as a lender, I think that now we're looking at due diligence in a different type of way. Again, going back to the viability of my capital return. And, I had an investor that really brought it out and broke it down, for, even if I was getting he said to me, even if I was getting a 20% rate of return, that's only $20,000. I have to give you $100,000. So the threat is not getting my capital back because that $100,000 is 5 times the amount of return that I'm expecting. Or for the last 10 years, we have repeat lenders that were just happy to get $1,000 a month. Now they're reluctant to let that money go. They're reluctant to diversify because they've got stuff stuck in different places. And there's some really great investors whose eggs are not all in one basket. And you'd be surprised how many people have 3 or 4 more loans out there that aren't materializing. And so, it is a difficult place. It's a difficult place. Like, I mean, when we talk about OPM, this isn't like a buzz, like, yes, it is a buzzword that you hear at workshops and stuff like that. But when you're actually in real estate communities, this isn't OPM. This is my kid's registered education plan, right? This is somebody's retirement. The cash flow that they were living off of when times were good was paying their bills. Now, all of a sudden, with the combination of an increase in interest rates and the lack of funds being returned, people are selling their homes. Who would have thought in a world of abundance, investors were going to be the ones selling their homes and having struggles from a cash flow perspective for their day-to-day incomes, right? Like we have a lot of really, really kick-ass investors that are lenders who retired early and they were able to live off of their cash flow, and we've seen it in the last year reduced to nothing, right? And so, it's it's
Not just
uh
cash
it's
flow, but
trouble. Yeah,
yeah,
it's troubling. And then their initial capital, right? So they
yeah,
can't even
yeah.
make something, with what they have because they're not getting it back. And I think that's really concerning. And so, with Jen and myself, we're into multi-units. So, the I don't want to call it a superstition, but as the saying goes, they're bulletproof assets, right? And some of them, while being built, haven't done well. But I mean, I feel that number one, okay, so if we're talking about, what changes in this climate, number one, having a really good deal, right, with conservative math and still performs high is critical right now. It's very, very critical. One of the things that I'm noticing too, and it's so important for lenders to ask for this information, but they weren't asking for it before, is your level of experience or expertise. Okay. The other thing that people are looking for that they didn't look for a really long time was skin in the game. Right. So now we have some developers and other issuers that are like, if you don't have $1 million to your name, you shouldn't be borrowing $1 million. Right. But nobody used to say that
Mhm,
before. Right. It
mhm.
was reputational based. So we went from this place where, people were lending based on character. Right. You've heard it before. You need to know, like, and trust that person. Really, to be honest, it's more than that. Like it's really, really more than that. And so, it used to be the fact that people would lend based on, oh, I know this person. This person is really well known. I see them online. I see them on shows. I see them all this stuff. But they're not asking the critical questions that are in the numbers, like what is the loan to value? Right? Like if everything went bust, what is this land worth? And can I get my money back? What does that look like? And so, I'm happy to see that more lenders are asking those questions. I'm not happy to see that there's less of those lenders, period. Right. And so, yeah, yeah. Um, so tactics, when we talk about, strategies that have been keeping, good borrowers going, what you're going to notice is, like I said, back in the day, it used to be the case that you could do a Zoom session, have 30 to 40 people in that room, maybe 50, really good investors might have 100, and you would have that raise wrapped up in 3 weeks. Okay. So that is not a reality now. For those of you that are paying attention, a lot of borrowers and a lot of investors are doing weeklies now. Right. So they're doing weekly sessions of adding value. And then at the end of their sessions, they might talk about their deal a little bit, but they're not constantly pumping this deal out, and their posts aren't deal specific. It's more, we're going back to this adding value, but it's weekly. So what you're going to see is these Zooms might not have 30 people. There might be like 7 to 10 people, and you're bringing in an investor or two after each session, rather than doing, the shotgun approach and doing discovery calls with everybody that's introduced. And so that's one of the things I noticed, is that you got to put yourself out there weekly, if not weekly, bi-weekly. Okay. Now that people are definitely scrutinizing your level of expertise, I'm really happy that on my development I did this, is that, I don't have experience developing. I've never developed anything in my life, right? I've got a really good reputation. And so I thought to myself, that's not enough to raise these funds and be secure. So I brought in a partner who has a high net worth and does have a reputation for developing, because I knew that objection would come up. Now, more so, it's coming up. So I'm really happy that I paired with that. And so what am I trying to say about this is, I don't know how's the best way to say it without sounding vulgar. You don't have to screw every cow. So have you heard that story where the father cow I guess it's a bull, and the son says, "Wow, look at all those cows down there in the valley. We should run down there and get one and screw one." And the dad looks at the son and says, "No, son, let's walk down and get them all." Okay. I think my moral of the story is you don't have to F every cow. Does that make sense? So if you making less by bringing in a partner that has more experience, more credentials, if that's going to get the deal done and it's going to help you raise money, I urge you, please do that. We don't have to make $1 million on every deal, right? We don't have to make 100 grand on every deal. If you can bring someone in and your investors are more secure because of it, because you bring someone in with the net worth that can cover it, you bring someone in that has that experience, you're off to a better start than most people. And I hate to say it, but the glory days are past us, right? This last 10 years were amazing, right? The appreciation was just creating, like, I hate to say it, like creating imaginary money, right? The ARVs and the market was moving so high that were we were making money off future values, and now we can't rely on that, right? And so this is why I say multi-units are bulletproof, because future values aren't in it. We're looking at values based on income. And that can be calculated in a more conservative manner over, comparables, right? Because so we were relying on comps of future values, and those future values started to not materialize, and people got stuck, right? It wasn't, there's a lot of reasons why people aren't getting their capital back, but people seem to focus on like the media parts of it. So this person grew too fast, they took on too much, they scaled too quickly. Those are the ones that people are looking at and saying, "Oh my gosh, shame on you." No one's really talking about the people that had a straight up awesome deal, and the changes in CMHC just totally screwed them over, right? Like, how do you prepare for that? How about all the people that had kick-ass deals, and then all of a sudden the rates made them crap deals? Right now, that you can prepare for. You can always do your math at a higher rate to see how good this deal is. But I don't think anybody was doing math at 7 and 8% when they were analyzing. So now we're at that place. I talk to more and more people, and they're doing their projections on 7%. Even though rates are coming down, we never know if they're going to go over that. And you hear a lot of the old school investors, and they're like, "Remember the 80s, right? rates were 21%. Yeah, that's when my parents bought a house, right? And I don't even know how they did it. So here I am like, oh my gosh, now I realize why my parents had 3 jobs each. The interest rates were 21%, right? And so if you look at an income property and you do 20% interest, it almost doesn't make sense to do anything, right? It only makes sense to keep a job, but that's not going to get us anywhere. So what are the things that we can do to keep people safe and to operate with integrity? Definitely bringing in muscle is a big piece, right? So bringing in someone more experienced, sharing your cut with them. I think that raising, so usually we have a timeline of how long it takes to raise and close on a property. I think your lead out time is huge, right? Like how much time you give yourself to raise those funds. Having a system is huge, right? So back, like, I mean, even like a year ago, I think I've spoken to people and they were like, yeah, I'm in this deal. And I'm like, well, what, like, what did you sign on the deal? Oh, nothing. It was a promissory note. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. But like, do you have a promissory note like written? No, no, no. I just forwarded the money. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, you don't even have like a signed promissory note? Yeah, it's like a spit and a handshake. And, I think if you're a lender, please respect your money. You can't, I don't mean to laugh. That was a nervous laugh. You cannot do that. You cannot and should not do that, especially and Alfonso says this all the time. Our money is supposed to be like soldiers. We send them out to war and they come back with prisoners, right? They come back with friends or prisoners. They come back with more. Right now, we're sending off our money to war and they're dying. Our dollars are dying, or they're getting captured by other people and not returning, and they're being prisoners of war. And so, I think that now is a good time to talk about what that looks like and what is working, right? I think that personally, there's no secret sauce. I think really what's happening is a lot of us are doing more of the things that work. We're doing them more often and we're doing them with more integrity, right? So being upfront and honest about where you lack experience, maybe where you lack funding, what's happening with the deal. Your exit strategy is huge. Now you're going to find that people really, really want to invest in things that have multiple exit strategies. You got it. You finished my sentence there, right?
Mhm.
So can you examine a deal and it have multiple exit strategies, right? Like even if you're doing a small flip, can you look at that property and say, okay, well, if this doesn't sell, can it hold? Right? Definitely discipline-based fundamentals that I think all of us should put into our business is huge. What are the other things that are working for me and for other people that I see? I think that pivoting is so important. So what we found, and I wonder if I'm allowed to talk about this. I guess, better to ask forgiveness than ask permission, right? But what we found with our raise is that a lot of people are reluctant to get in on 5-year deals, right? These
Agreed.
long-term deals, people are very, very reluctant because they're like, man, I gave my money out for a year or 18 months and it never came back. Like, are you kidding? I'm not giving anything out for 5 years. So we had to pivot. Actually, for Sabrina Park, what we did was we're offering now. We didn't have it before, but now we're offering 12 to 18 months, 15%, and it's cash flow. So number one, people really like cash flow right now, and people really like long term. Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of cash flow out there while lenders were using their lines of credit. So as rates went up, we lost a bunch of lenders simply because they couldn't use their lines of credit. Right? At 7%, you could be offering 15%, and really they're just getting, you know, 8%, which isn't anything to brag about. Do you know what I'm saying? So they just held on to their lines of credit and they weren't using them. I think that you need to keep that into consideration, that if someone is using a line of credit, you got to ask that question. And I think one of the things that even before this unrest in the lending and borrowing community, one of the things that I feel separated me aside as a borrower was I learned to say no early on,
Mhm.
right? I learned to figure out who is my ideal lender, and can I say no to people? So, I think that it's important for any investor to just recognize you don't want to take someone's everything. Does that make sense? So if someone tells you they have a certain amount of money and they're willing to give it to you all, number one, what are they telling you? They're telling you that they're going to leave their retirement in your hands. Number one, right? They're going to leave it all up to you. Number two, they're telling you that they don't want to do that work, right? And so it's your job, your fiduciary responsibility as a borrower to say, I wouldn't take all your money. And in fact, I have an exempt market dealer and they won't let me. right? So if you get into the place where you're raising into MFTs and REITs or Reddits or whatever, you might have an EMD that's between you and the lender. And often, well, hopefully always, they're going to say the max of your funds that I can take to be safe is 10%,
Mhm.
right? And so can we operate that way? Can we diversify? Can we, cast a wider net on investors so that we're, rather than taking all of someone's money, we're taking little bits from more people, I think, and you'll thank yourself for that, right? Other things that I think most of us are going to see is that if you belong to just one group for many years, it's just not going to cut it. You're going to have to belong to multiple groups, right? So not only are we doing multiple sessions, weekly sessions, bi-weekly sessions, but we're also joining other groups. And it's funny because not all groups are built equal. So sometimes you're going to go to a meetup and you're going to be like, what the hell is happening here? And sometimes you'll go into a room and you'll be like, these are my people, right? And so you really got to have that resilience and put that time aside. I think that there's a lot of people that go to meetups and they go to galas and they go to, yacht parties and golf outings and stuff like that. Um, and it might look like they're out there socializing, but honestly, I don't judge the person that's at every meetup. Actually, I applaud them because I know they usually work and they're usually investors and they're taking their free time and they're going to networking opportunities, right? I think it's so important to remember that yes, it's a networking opportunity. Yes, it's a lot of fun. Yes, my friends are going to be there, but the most important thing is I'm showing up for work. These are my hours, right? Like in Wealth Genius, people often talk about the 6 to 10ers, and really it's beyond that, right? It's 6 to 10ers and 9 to 5ers or 9 to 9ers on weekends, right? Like you really have to put that time aside. You just came back from a retreat. How long were you there for?
Drove up
Drove
Thursday,
up,
got home at midnight last night.
right? That's a commitment. Now, if you're set up and you're operating on who, not how, then you can run your business for those 3 days, but you're not hands-on for those 3 days. So you
Mhm.
really have to trust your team. If you don't have a great team, things are stalling and things aren't happening the way that you want them to happen. So yeah,
Right.
those are those.
Yeah, because you have to be present too in the event that you're attending, right? Like you don't want to be working on stuff in the background. Like you really want to be there and
Not a yeah, and I not that age plays into this a lot, but you got to remember, right? Like the demographic of lenders, and especially the people that are trying to speed up their retirement, right? They're like my parents' age. Do you know what I'm saying? And like, if I'm on a phone the whole time while I'm having a conversation, you're not exactly building a relationship of respect, right?
Mhm.
You're not even making eye contact. So all of a sudden, we're forgetting the most basic fundamental rules because we're all over the place, right? Other things that I'm seeing that people really, really like where lenders are making the shift. It used to be the case that people that were doing OPM really were doing OPM. Like they literally had none of their own money, like zip. And I'm one of those people. Zero in most of my deals, but eventually my deals got good enough that I could take money out of them and move them into the next one. But all of a sudden, people talked about skin in the game and they always referred to skin in the game as time when it's not. It's actually money. How much of your own money is in there? So if you've got multiple properties and you're posting pictures on social media as like, hey, look, I got this refinance check, you better not be showing up at the next deal with none of your own money. I'll tell you that much for free. And if you have some of your own money and skin in the game, you will get a better reception than someone that has none. So yeah,
Can I make a comment on that too? Like
sure.
I feel, um, when I find a really great deal, I want to put my money in because I want to make more money because I know it's a great deal.
Of course, of course.
Right?
And lenders aren't dumb. I mean, they've all had like some lenders were lending reputation based. I think now those lenders are less. And lenders that are ready to take action are mathematicians. So they're doing the math, right? So if you can show that you have money or skin in the game equal or at least half of what you're borrowing, people feel a lot more comfortable about that and they can sleep at night. And if it helps you sleep at night, you should totally do it. Right. And so yeah, it's changing. While I wish it didn't, I think it's changing for the best and for the better, right? Like as hard as it is for all of us. Oh, my glasses. Who needs them? Yeah, as hard as it is for all of us, it is probably for the better. I think that we've been spoiled for a really long time, reputational based to lend. And I think that it should be more than reputation. Yes, track record is so important, but if everybody makes number based decisions, right, we're less emotional on it, right? Because think about it. You say, well, I lent my person to that person. I lent my money to that person because I like them. Like is not a number, like is an emotion, right? And so now that's becoming less and less, and I think that's so important. And I think that moving forward, will it still continue to be a grind? For sure, but more money, more people's money is going to be safe. I think even from the marketing perspective, we used to rely on a lot of weird strategies to market ourselves, right? Like there was a little while there where people were just constantly brand rubbing. Do you know what I'm saying? Right. And now it's going to take more than that. I made a joke at another place. I spoke about capital raising and they asked, well, how does this affect your marketing? And I said, well, I'll tell you this much. It's going to take more than a Facebook page and a hockey jersey to raise that money. Right. So for those of you that are from the old school rain world, there were a lot of people going to events and they'd have their hockey jerseys with their names and, not just one person, a ton. And the truth of the matter is it's going to take a little bit more than that, right? You should have an investor relation plan. So when you drop a deal and you release a deal, be transparent about how you intend to communicate, right? Even my partner, from Plenitude, she does an update every Friday, and you can log in and into Zoom every Friday, and she'll talk about all the deals, right? I don't know if she's got that on pause because people stop showing up. Does that make sense? Like she was communicating so often that she didn't even need to do every Friday because people just weren't showing up because they knew that, the deals were progressing. They got the information that they were looking for and that kind of thing. So investor relations is a huge piece. They like lenders really want to know, how often are you going to communicate to me? When are you going to communicate to me? And a lot of times people really want to know, like if things aren't going well, I'm not going to hold it against you, but I want to know as soon as possible. So, it's crazy to think that our lenders have to ask for that, you
Yeah,
know?
I think that's an important question when you're interviewing, shall we say, a lender, is
Mhm.
how often do you like to be communicated with? What form of communication do you like? Like, you don't want to
Mhm.
spam them. You don't want to, people are busy, but
Yep.
know what their expectations are so that you can meet them,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I when I did the $2 million raise, I used the mortgage broker to help with some of it, right? And before they would say yes to it, the deal had to check off a bunch of boxes. Like it had to have a proper loan to value, right? It had to be of a specific duration, right? Like it couldn't be over 1 year. There were a lot of things that they looked at that verified that deal before they would even say yes. And I'm really glad that the deal made it through that, because then I knew I had confidence in the deal prior to the raise, right? It wasn't just this cowboy raise. I don't know the numbers. I was pretty specific about it. And having to go through a mortgage broker, their due diligence was to the next level. So I felt good about that, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, what are some of the other challenges that you want to speak on? Is there anything in particular that we can confront and not be gossipy but be proactive?
Yeah, no, I think, like you said, the climate's changing. That's just what's going on. These people with big reputations who were touted as experienced investors. Um,
Mhm,
but my take on it is they were not running their numbers conservatively and expecting interest rates to stay low and
mhm.
over leverage, right? And they couldn't get the refis to
Yeah, typically what you're going to see often, the two things are budget and time. And I've been around for 12 years. It used to be the case that if you were going to crunch your numbers conservatively for your rental budget, you would just add 20% right away, right? So you have a budget, add 20% to be conservative, and then also add 20% on time. And I don't think a lot of people were doing that. Now we're in this place where interest rates are higher. Adding 20% to that actually isn't enough anymore, which
yeah,
is tough, right? Because you don't want to walk away from a perfectly good deal because it doesn't look good if you add 20% to the timeline or to the budget. But that's the reality of being conservative, that if that property doesn't cash flow, if it doesn't meet the number requirements, it might not be that good of a deal to begin with, to be
right,
honest,
yes.
right? I've had some people, we do a session of getting unstuck, And so, something that was really enlightening to me was one of the people that were helping facilitate this Get Unstuck session, pointed out, your return isn't based on raising, yes, while it's based on raising the value of the real estate, it's not only based on that, it's also based on you operating this business, right? So now I know you're a great investor, but can you operate a business that you've never done before? And that's what lenders are looking like. This looks like this looks like I'm investing in an operating company, not a real estate company. And that was making people reluctant to raise. So, is your return contingent on your day-to-day operations? Because I'm gonna use a magnifying glass to say, what kind of experience do you have in that, right? If it's just, lipstick on a pig, then we can it's a little bit more predictable math. But if we're like, oh, we've got to have an occupancy of this many and it's got to be rented out this many days of the month, like, ooh, you gotta be a little bit careful about how you present that if you want people to come in with you. Um, One of the things that you're gonna know, and a lot of people that are watching this will know, is the what's the word for it? The best deals right now, where people are happy to give their money, are deals that have a good plan to get your capital out, but you stay in the deal. So that used to be a thing like 5 years ago. A lot of deals were like that. And then all of a sudden, poof, the borrowers just kind of realized, listen, if I borrow private money at 10%, I get to keep the deal and I
Yeah.
make more. So
Yeah.
now we're going back to this place where we're at share the wealth, where we're actually looking for partners, where people are going to stay in the deal after you've paid them out. And why wouldn't they? I'm gonna be in the deal after I pay you out, and I hadn't put my money in from the beginning.
Right.
Why not keep
Right.
the partners along the way? It's such a weird concept to me. I feel like there are a lot of investors out there that are lenders, and they want to own buildings, and they want to be part of developments. And these are nurses, these are dentists, these are senior citizens that, they don't have the capacity, the time, they might not have the skill, they might not have the confidence. That's usually what it comes down to. And they're looking to be genuine partners, right? Like that's a merriment that we should be into, right? Are we investing with people that we can have a party with and everybody enjoys each other? Is that too much to ask for? Sometimes, you know what I mean? Is it unrealistic? I don't know, right? But if you're taking people's funds and then you're returning them when you say you are, and they get to stay part of the deal and they get to enjoy the winning, I'm pretty sure they're going to be a little bit more lenient if you go over time. Because in their minds, at some point, the deal will be done. I'll get my funds back. I don't care if he's late now. I don't care if he's not even paying interest right now, because the plan is still to own this thing together forever,
Yeah.
right? And
I don't
because
even
there's
put,
less of those.
yeah,
Sorry, go
I don't
ahead.
even put deals together that don't involve equity. Like I don't,
No,
right? Like I don't think
for
that's
sure.
fair. Just like, oh yeah, lend me your money. Yeah, I'll give you some money back. But then I own the building. Like, no, no, no. Let's
But how many deals in the last few years were structured that way, right?
right.
Because it made sense in the numbers, right? Like the mortgage broker that I worked with for the raise for Sabrina Park, Kyle Ford, when he started getting into developing, he was like, developers like, some of the big ones that we know, they're boasting like 30% rates of return. And everyone's like, take my money, 30% rates of return. What do you think the return is for the developers?
Yeah.
It's like 1,000% rate of return. Come on, you could give a little so that they're making more than 30%, right? And I hate to say the I word, the infinite returns, but like I said, that's a lot more attractive than 1 year, 15 to 18%. You get your money back, maybe you don't. You know what I mean? Like I would prefer if a lot of deals could be structured where, especially one day I'm going to be a lender. And I think, how do I grow my portfolio? It's going to be with these types of deals. These type of deals where you can lend your money, at some point in time you get your money back and you get to go play again and grow your portfolio because you are still an owner in everything that you've partaken in. And I feel like those deals for a little while were few and far between. You play in the multi-unit space, so it affords you the ability to do that as long as you stay within budget. But that's more realistic, right? You're not going to take 10 people and do a onesie or twosie and everybody be happy. There's not going to be enough to split, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing about multifamily too, is you mitigate the risk. The more doors, right? The more you mitigate the risk. And the commercial financing is a whole different animal,
Mhm.
yeah, so, yeah. Anyways, it's just.
No, absolutely. Hey,
Mhm.
I think one of the things that I would love um the investing community to know is that you can still do this and have little experience, but you should bring in a mentor. Does that make sense? Don't go at it alone. Like, I learned this, I bought this piece of land, I'm gonna go at it, and you're going at it alone. Like I said, I would rather, for me anyways, personally, I would rather make less and share with someone that will ensure that I'm crossing the finish line than try to pretend I know something that I don't, is huge. Right. And so you'll see in the future, I'll be partnering with more partners, and I'm not going to play it small. Right. I'm never going to bring someone on that I have to mentor. I'm likely going to bring someone on that's going to mentor me almost each and every time. Right. So yeah.
Right. Use their expertise and everybody.
Well, that's it. I don't want to be pitching an offering or be an issuer. And I'm like, look at this fantastic deal. And they're going to be like, well, you've only completed one. Who are you? Right.
Right,
And I'd rather not catch a dead end. I'd rather bring someone in that has a track record of, accomplishing 10 deals over however many years and make less, but give that confidence and be able to handle that objection. That makes sense. Like, just be honest with yourself. What do you bring to the
right,
table and what do you not? And bring in the people that have what you don't have for sure. So
right, right.
yeah.
And get to know your partners too before you get involved with them. Like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
reputations, like really it's dating, right? Like getting to know what their core values are. You have to align.
Yep.
Um,
No, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of important things. As well as I think the lenders want to know what your core values are. And that's a big part of, it's not just on reputation. Like I think people are taking their time putting their money out. Like they really want to
Mhm.
know who they're investing with, what your experience is. Yeah, because it is a business. And
Yeah.
that's one huge advantage that I have is that I've been in business for 100 years because I'm 100 years old. Right? So getting into real estate investing is just another business. It's just another lane. But
Yeah.
I certainly have learned to pivot, and that's
Mhm.
what you have to be able to do. It's 3 exit strategies.
Seriously, yeah. No,
Mhm.
absolutely. Three exit strategies is a huge one. There are a few things that we're going to see out there, I just hope everybody is taking it seriously, right? Like I make the joke sometimes that landlording is one of the oldest gigs in the book. Like, when you watch the Nativity cartoon, like they were slamming doors on Mary and Joseph, and poor Jesus was born in a manger. There was zero vacancy, right? You know what I'm saying? Zero vacancy back in that time. Well, if you're 100 years old, you might have been there. Do you know what I'm
I,
saying?
I I was born right after that.
Just right after, right? And
Yeah.
so, but that's the thing, right? Some of the principles remain the same. And that's what I meant when I said it's a lot like what I'm seeing is people are doing the things that work, but they're doing them more often. People are showing integrity by being transparent, and in some cases, they're too transparent. Does that make sense? Like it used to be the case that, you've heard this before, you're not going to list something on Kijiji and list all the things that are wrong with it. Now you're seeing people are actually doing that because they want you to know everything. And if you're willing to lend your funds after learning all that,
Right, right.
we've got a deal.
Yeah,
Does that make
yeah,
sense? And
yeah,
so
exactly.
we're on the right track. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's great information. Always a pleasure, Jojo, talking with
really, and
you.
we hit the hour there. Oh my
But
gosh, I'm
we
so
are
sorry.
awfully close to an hour, so I thought we better start wrapping up.
Yeah,
We're,
I never shut up,
I
unfortunately.
know,
I'm
no,
so
no,
sorry
no,
about
no.
that.
I'm surprised we got through this much without laughing. We were like strictly business.
Yeah, I listen, I refer to my I refer to my I'm blessed, right? So for those of you that don't know, I'm blessed with ADHD and probably a couple other things. But I refer to it as my personal alphabet. And so I don't say, oh yeah, I always lose track because I have ADHD. I say, because I have ADHD, I need to make sure that I don't fall off track. So I was super hyper focused in here because I know that I can ramble on and on and on. I really hope I've been consistent with my language and what I'm talking about, not repeating the same things. But yeah, time flew and I just looked at it and realized, oh my gosh, did I just blabber on about nothing?
No, no, you not at all. You were bang on, and you just gave all kinds of great advice and tips, and yeah, anybody looking to raise capital. Tell us maybe how people can reach out to you to invest in your project.
Yeah, so for the project itself, for the long-term stuff, we're raising into a REIT, right? So your security is in the REIT. It's a spread over 5 projects, as in a GPLP form. And now we've introduced a cash flow option because we understand that that's what a lot of lenders feel comfortable doing. So 12 to 18 months, we're doing 15%. That's 10% monthly annualized and 5% at the end. So 12 to 18 months. If it takes 18 months, at the end of it, you'll get 7,000. If it takes 12 months, at the end of it, you'll get 5,000. And if you lend 100 grand, you're getting about 833 a month. If you want more information on the development itself, the project, or the team, I'll be putting my phone number in the comments. Please don't crank call me, or if you will, do it between 9 and 5 because I'm at my job and I'm happy to take crank calls and laugh about it with the team. And I'll put my email in there. But yeah, you know what I mean? If you're going to use my phone number, call and refer to me as Jojo. Then I know that I'm talking to a family friend, And if we're not that close, use my email. I'm just kidding. For everybody, please feel free to call. I'll put my number in the comments. And yeah, looking forward to talking to each and every one of you. Don't be surprised if I tell you this deal might not be for you if you're borrowing from a line of credit, as long as you have a good rate or you can sustain or you're an accredited investor, have it, right? If you're coming into the REIT, we are going to make you go through an EMD because we want to make sure that you're safe. We want to do your KYC. We want to do all of that stuff, right? And so, reach out anytime, all the time for anything and everything. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks. Great opportunity with Jojo, my buddy.
I love it. You've never been shy to call me that before. Now we're on camera and you're like, can I call you that? Yeah, of course you can. If anything,
Just
if
hey,
anything, I love it. I
Jojo.
love that you call me that because it reminds me how close we've gotten in such a short amount of time. So I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
appreciate you being comfortable to call me that. So
yeah.
yeah.
We always have a great time when we're together, right? We
Yeah,
are
thank you for having me
like
on.
family.
Yeah, this has been a good thing. One of the things that I didn't mention in what am I doing that works is I'm trying to get out there. And usually, for those of you that don't know me, if you go to my Facebook, you wouldn't even know I was an investor, right? Because I don't post a lot of things unless I've been tagged. And so now I'm making a conscious effort to get out there, do some more shows, podcasts, post more on my private page, use stories. And I'm a little bit of that ancient vintage where I really suck with technology. I'm just not that kind of Asian, unfortunately. So, I'm getting better at it though. So
Well,
yeah.
yes and no. Like, I'm in this stream where they're encouraging us to post, but I
Mhm.
think that being said, there was some posts a couple of times about people that post a lot on Facebook, and it's not just about that. That's it,
No.
right? Like, just because there's a lot of posts, you really have to get to know the deals. You have to do your due diligence. You have to get to know
Mhm.
what the offering's all about, and
Yep.
who the people are all about. It's just if you see
Absolutely.
me, yeah, if you see me a lot or Jojo, um, like, get on a one-on-one call, right?
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
that's where the real work happens is in the discovery calls. And I feel
Yes.
like those kind of disappeared for a little while and now they're more essential than ever. I can tell you that, probably 50, 60% of my lenders came from having a long conversation to make sure we were good for each other and that the deal was good for them. And I
Yeah.
think that's got to happen. It's essential. This shotgun marketing stuff isn't going to last long. And I think everybody just needs to remember that social media is a tool,
Hmm.
right? It is just a tool. You are who you are with or without social media, right? So consistency and abundance in posting is one thing. It's really just relevance. People are seeing you repeatedly and they're remembering you, but that's not enough to raise money,
I
right?
agree.
And
I
even when
agree.
you're posting regularly, is what you're posting of value,
Right.
right? Is it honest or are you just recycling someone else's meme? Do you know what I'm saying? And so,
Yeah. Good point.
right,
Good
I can
point.
say that to you because everything you do is pretty original, right? So we could laugh at all the other people like, ah, just copying us. You know what I mean? But it's so important, I think, to be yourself and that
Be
reflect in your.
authentic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Anyway, so if you see lots of either one of us um coming up
yeah,
on social media, we are authentic, but I prefer yeah, one-on-one, you know,
I think everybody knows we love to talk. And so if you
right? Yeah,
engage us in a one-on-one
absolutely.
conversation, you're gonna get
Yeah,
meat.
yeah,
More than what we can give in an
yeah.
hour. So
Actually, I'm jumping on a call right after this. Somebody, a couple that I just spent the weekend with, actually the weekend before they were at my house, and we're investing together. And they, I had some meetings today,
yeah,
and I wanted to, touch base with them tonight. And
amazing.
yeah, so I said phone call or Zoom, and they said, "What's your preference?" I said Zoom. I like talking, looking at people when I'm talking to them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's amazing. I used to be old school phone caller. I'm an 80s baby, but now I'm realizing that this face to face, now that we live in a virtual world, is
yeah,
so essential, right?
yeah.
Especially when we're talking about money. I want to see that person's body
Want to see my
language.
eyes, right?
Yeah, when
Yeah,
you ask the minimum, I want to see if you shake at it and see if
yeah,
I need to make an adjustment. What are you
yeah,
comfortable lending? If I say it's $100,000 minimum and you do one of these, okay,
yeah,
maybe we could start slow. Do you know what
yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah.
On
No,
the phone, you're not
exactly.
going to catch that unless they make a sound, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. But yeah, my number one preference is face to face, like in person,
yes, yeah,
right? But
absolutely. Dinner,
yeah,
coffee, whatever that is. I
yeah,
can tell
yeah.
you, I'll let you in on a little secret. I have a team that I've been working with and putting together. We've been talking and looking at deals for a year.
Mhm.
That's how serious we are about partnership, is that we've been getting to know each other. We haven't bought anything yet,
No,
but we have filtered out other people that wanted to be part of this team because they just didn't share values, and we've been moving slow. I think by the time we put together a deal, it's going to be something amazing. So keep an eye out for that. And then you'll see the team and you'll be like, that's what he meant. Right. And so I'm not in a rush. I'm not in a rush to make a ton of money. I'm in a rush to do it right, if that makes sense. And even though I say I'm in a rush, I'm actually willing to take my time. So
yeah.
yeah.
I want strong relationships that we
Yeah.
can rinse and repeat. That like it's
I
yeah.
want to be able to celebrate with my general partners. I don't
Mhm.
want by the end of the deal we can't stand each other because we've had so many difficult conversations that we're happy to be done with it. I don't care if you have adult kids and I have little kids. I want to be able to celebrate with you on the beach. Does that make
Abs-
sense? I want to be able to look back and laugh and say we've had a great experience. Then, wow, we've made it out of that alive.
Yeah,
I don't want it to be
absolutely,
that way. I want it to be fun,
absolutely.
kind of like this session we just had, right? So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's me. Fun, easy, and profitable.
fun, easy, and profitable. See, I need to work on
That's
my
that's
rule of
my
threes.
mission.
Yeah,
That's my mission.
that's
Okay,
awesome.
well, again, reach out to Jojo on
Yeah, keep an
you're
eye out
gonna
for my
drop
contact.
yeah, you're
Yeah,
gonna
it'll be in
drop
the
your
comments.
contact information into the comments on
Yep.
Facebook, so that's great. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining tonight, and we'll see you all on the next video next week. Have a great
Thanks,
night.
everybody. Yeah, thanks for having me again. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.
Absolutely. Okay.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.